Hello everyone. Welcome to Saturday the 12th of April. We are going to be working on a brief portrait today. We're doing portrait practice every day, and this month I'm focusing on wet media. And we're going to be working from this image of Tsutomu Yamaguchi. I misspelt that here, so I'll correct that. This image and this story was shared by the History Photographed Instagram account. And I was just looking at Instagram this evening and thinking, who should we draw today? And saw some wonderful photos and read this really moving and terrible story. But of Tsutomu, who survived two nuclear bomb explosions. And it's just, it ended, wait a minute, I'll see if I can find, it's just so he spent his life being an activist. So he was 29 years old when he survived the bombings and spent his life trying to bring awareness to the fact that this should never happen again, and that these instruments should be instruments of destruction, should be gotten rid of entirely. But a lovely thing he said at the end, that I could have died on either of those days, those two bomb blasts that he survived. Everything that follows is a bonus, and that he remained healthy, and despite what he went through, he must have had quite a drive, and what a wild story. And I just thought this image was lovely, and we're going to work on this portrait now. So we can be with that, or we can just be focused on the portrait and wish for a world where such things never happen again. I would say, get rid of all bombs. Let's not bomb anyone. Hello, Ingrid, Tommy, Corinna, Lewis, and Martina. So nice to have you here. I was just reading before coming to the live stream. So I was busy. We were having a family weekend. And it's always nice to spend time with the kids. And I was in Heiligenstadt today. Tell me in the chat or the comments if you've ever been to Heiligenstadt. Let's work on this portrait. So I was thinking the shadow shapes on this are so cool. So I'm thinking I would like to I'm going to do a drawing beforehand. I'm going to keep that drawing really brief. The last few days I have courageously gone straight to watercolor. And this, at the time I ended the stream, I was kind of like, not totally content. But as this child has been staring at me throughout the day, I'm like, oh, that's okay. And I think it's something about the lack of definition, and that's something that I'm trying to push by doing more wet, going straight to watercolor, and just like play with the wetness of it. And I feel like this could get wetter, and at the same time I'm kind of like longing for definition. So I'm going to start this portrait today with drawing. And you can all tell me what you've been doing today. Right. So there's a city nearby called Heilbad Heiligenstadt, which is like saintly city. Hello, Klaus. And it's quite close to where I live. So if you want here, it's going to be tricky to see. It's a bit bright, but Tsutomu Yamaguchi and History Photographed, which is a huge Instagram account which shares lots of like random historical stuff. And you can tag me on Instagram, and you can share on the Discord server. I'll put the timer on and just start drawing, shall we? So where I live is really close to the former border with Eastern Germany. And though the country has been, the country's been reunited since '89, and it's interesting because this region that I live really close to is called Eichsfeld, and it's a really Catholic region, which for the surrounding areas kind of not super common. Like if you go further south in Germany, Bavaria is very Catholic, and you see Jesus and crosses all over the place. And it's interesting that just by going a couple of kilometers in that direction, there are these two cultural differences and historical differences. The one is that it's a really Catholic region, and the other that it was in Eastern Germany, the former Eastern Germany. And although, yeah, the country's been reunited all this time, there still is this. It's a different region, and there's a different history, and it's really interesting. And for whatever reason, I've been living here about 10 years, and the city that we're close to, which is Göttingen, which is in Niedersachsen, and Heiligenstadt in Thüringen, is like we just, for whatever we need to do, we're oriented towards that city. It's bigger than Heiligenstadt as well. But I think it was maybe last year or the year before, for the first time, I went to Heiligenstadt, and I was just like, wow, this place, it's like a beautiful little city, and it's so close. And I had just never been there, and it was really interesting. We all went there today. And yeah, it's really interesting to me. I worked on a construction site where everyone else working there, it was in Göttingen, which is Western Germany, in Niedersachsen, but everyone else working there was from Thüringen, which is the former Eastern Germany, from the region I went to today. And I got to learn a lot just in that, I think it was half a year that I was working with them. Learn a lot just about like what it was like in the East, what it's still like. And something I found really interesting was that in every conversation, they would talk about before the fall of the wall and after. Let me know if anyone here is from Thüringen. It was just so interesting to me, because I grew up with this sense of Australia being this one country from coast to coast, east to west, north to south. As an adult, I had learned that it was many nations and many peoples that inhabited so-called Australia. But as I grew up, it was like from coast to coast, same language, same story. And it was really fascinating for me to work with these people who lived so close, and still do live so close to where I live currently in Germany, and have lived through a very different side of the history of this place. So there was like a border, a tightly controlled border all the way along, and just a couple kilometers from where I live. And the separation of the country, separations of families that had just arbitrarily been like, okay, that's east, that's west. And then families were split for a very long time. So there's a lot of really intense stories. But yeah, it was interesting working with these guys and learning about it. And interesting to live so close. All right, I think this is really interesting, talking in terms of shadow shapes now. I really like these highlights of the upper eyelid, and the whole iris and the white of the eye all exist within shadow. So this is like a 5-minute preliminary drawing, and it's just set up the shapes. And now I'm going to get into it. Going to be pretty wet. Am I going to draw it with watercolor pencil? No, I'm not. But because these shadow shapes are so strong, and especially because of this, when I realized, oh look, I really want that preserved within the shadow, because I think it's a really amazing shape. When I saw that, I was like, I think it'd be good to draw this one first. And I can still now go in, try and be pretty bold and explore with the colors, but now I've got things like I've got this idea that this is shadow, this is shadow. Like having drawn it first, now I have feel like I have a really kind of closer understanding of what I'm looking at. So it's not a watercolor pencil. These lines will stay put. Yeah, and you already noticed. Is it cobalt blue? It's worn off. I can't tell. Number 149 polychromos pencil. What is this? I have I think, is this raw sienna or raw umber? I still haven't looked at what the names are of these paints. I apologize, but I've been doing other things. I've been in what used to formerly be a different country today. So I know lots of Germans because I live in Germany, and I know a lot of you watch my videos, and I wonder if there's anything you have to say about this former East and West thing, which for me, coming from somewhere so far away, which is so big, and growing up with the concept that it was all just one place, although it was immense. And that perspective has changed becoming an adult and learning more about what, the atrocities that the country was founded upon, and that there are actually a wealth of nations and peoples that I was just oblivious to. But yeah, there are so many interesting stories that I've heard about vor der Wende, nach der Wende. And I really appreciated that time working with those guys. It was super interesting. It was funny. My laboring phase. My first impression going for the job, and I was just looking for some work, like any work basically, and I found a job advertised. This is when I had first moved back to Germany from Kira and I lived in Australia for a couple of years. And when first moved back, my first job was as a beekeeper, and then beekeeping season was finished, and then I was just like looking for jobs, and I had just graduated from architectural studies in Australia, and then I went for this job after being a beekeeper at a construction site, and I remember the guy who was he was taking me down into the basement, the cellar, which the whole floor was being demolished because they were making it deeper, making the floor of the basement deeper for the entire house. And as I walked down there, I was just like, whoa, I felt like I was being in a cave. And this guy who became my friend and colleague for that time was standing there, who's like with the jackhammer, just like breaking the floor. It's like, whoa, I felt like I was coming into a dwarven cavern in the middle of the city. And I remember the guy who took me down there was like, but you studied architecture. Are you sure you want this job? And I was like, yeah, sure. And it was good. I had fun there. I really enjoyed, like in the lunch breaks, I was always sketching everyone. Like we would take our breaks together and I'd be sketching them and then listening to their stories about vor der Wende, nach der Wende, before and after the fall of the wall. And it was so interesting to me. And yeah, it was for like 6 months, I think, and then I moved on to other things. Rave 222, you didn't catch what my relationship with Australia was. So-called Australia is the place I was born, South Australia. I lived there until I was 21. I grew up there. And when I was 21, I came to Europe and worked and travelled and So my relationship to it is that my family is there. I People ask if I miss it. I miss my family. I'd like to see my family more, and I have beautiful memories of growing up there and stuff. But even when I was traveling, I didn't miss things a lot. And I wonder about my relationship to Australia and my relationship to place in general. I moved a lot growing up, and I don't feel like firmly rooted in a place like many people do that I know and that I live with, for example. And yeah, I've wondered about the relationship to place and what it means, and especially since I left Australia and I got to really apprehend the brutality of the founding of Australia and of settler colonialism, and a lot of things that I've learnt and kind of questioned over the years after leaving the country. I wonder what my relationship to Australia is, what my relationship is to places at all. And something I realized as I was traveling, because I traveled for 4.5 years, and I just went to lots of places, mostly in Europe. And I never felt homesick, but I definitely didn't have a home. But I kind of felt like wherever I was kind of at home. And yeah, I think someday I would really like to be there again. And I also don't feel German. This is where I live, and this is where I've been for quite a while. But I also wonder what my relationship is to this place. I live here. I inhabit this place. I have family here. It's beautiful here. It's beautiful there. It's beautiful in most places, I think. Okay, and Ulverine said, what was your main reason leaving Australia for Germany? My main reason was I met Jochen, and he was on a working travel visa, a working holiday visa in Australia, and I was studying at the time, and his Volvo Bulli, his VW combi van, broke down outside my village. Like, I think it was 2 days before Christmas or something. So he was broken down, and because he has a German car and an old one at that, the workshop in town, the car workshop, was like, we can't deal with that. You'll have to go to a VW specialist. And so he was stuck there, and my dad brought him home. And he met him and had seen this van parked there for a couple of days, and he went and talked to this young German guy, and he saw that he had inside the ring of his pop top in the van, he had the Elven script that was written on the one ring. He had painted it inside, and he had all these fantasy books, and he was just sitting reading. And my dad came and looked into his van, and he was like, oh, I think you and my son would get along. How about you come back to our house? You can have a shower. And I met this guy, Jochen, and we were instantly super good friends. And I was like, I could do what Jochen's doing, but in Europe. I could just and I didn't have any vision for my life. I was just kind of drifting, enjoying it. I was studying architecture, but didn't really feel super deeply connected to architecture, although I enjoyed the studies and I had a good time. But then this friendly German came along, and I was like, oh, I could come visit you in Germany. And I framed it in the context of, I'm going to visit Germany to get inspired for my studies, studying architecture. And that's kind of the sensible sounding justification that I made. And then once I was gone, I was inspired not to keep studying architecture. And I was inspired to travel and realize architecture is amazing. And I have friends that I studied with. I feel like I have an understanding and appreciation of architecture and of the design of space and the way humans inhabit it, which I wouldn't have had. And I had a bit of a art education there as well, and I got to study design drawing principles, and and it was really interesting, and I had a good time, but I never felt like really a strong call to be an architect. So I came over thinking that that was my thing. I'm going to get inspired by like all this architecture in Europe. I'm going to come back and I'm going to just rock my architecture studies. I'm going to be so good. Because some of my friends who I was studying with, they had left and they were a bit older, so they had spent some time away. Because I basically, I went straight from school to university, and I was like, oh, I don't even really know what I want to do. And then my parents were like, we think you should go to university. I was the first person in my family to ever go to university. And like, you have the opportunity to go. So instead of just hanging out and working, because I worked at a supermarket, I was just like, I'm just going to work full time at the supermarket until I know what I want to do. And they're like, oh, how about you just start doing it and then see what happens, instead of the other way around. And so that's what I did. I studied for 3.5 years and then left, thinking I'd be gone for a year. And then I was gone for like 4.5 years. And then I went back to Australia for a couple of years. And I've been here now for a long time. Martina, when you think of Eastern Germany, one of the first things that pops into your head is the Trabant, the Trabi, the car. That's it? Rave 222. As a Dane, 80% of your history classes in school have been about World War II and East-West Germany. School trip to Berlin as well. Also went skiing somewhere else in Germany. Hotel looked like it hadn't been updated since DDR. Yeah. Oh, I didn't notice you had an Australian accent, but didn't know you were born and raised there. My dad sounds like a cool person. My dad is a cool person. Good one, Dad. Thanks, Dad. Elizabeth, you enjoying hearing my story? Yeah, that's a significant chapter of my story. And a lot of things happened within that time frame of the traveling, and it was like so inspiring, so cool, and here I am. Now I'm sitting in a village close to Göttingen, live streaming. My wife is German, yeah. From near Münsterland, and her family. So by the time I left Australia, when I was 21, I had moved 17 times for whatever reasons. And that was part of me. Like, I enjoyed every time. I didn't have to do all the moving and the hard stuff. I've realized, becoming an adult and having to move with kids. A lot of respect to my mother, who coordinated a lot of the moving, and my parents came to visit last year and told us some of the stories about some of the moves. And because as a kid I was just like, hey, we're going to a new place, and every time I was like, new neighbors, new bedroom, new garden, and it was fun and interesting to me every time. But I also have never had a sense of being like deeply rooted somewhere, apart from just like a general connection and admiration of the country and the land. And I think that is something that has enabled me to travel, and was a big difference with my wife and I when we traveled. And I was just kind of I felt like kind of tireless in traveling, and I just loved traveling so much, and I loved being places, and I had no longing to be home somewhere, which is something very different for Kira. That after a while she'd be like, I need somewhere to rest, to just be able to chill out. And so yeah, there were certain things about that rootlessness. And it's something I think about a lot. And I wonder about a lot of things. Um, Damn, you also moved to town as a kid and did enjoy it as well for the same reasons. Now you don't enjoy it as much exactly because you have to do the moving yourself. Yeah, right. it's it's so much more work when you have to do it all yourself. I just had to like pack my room, pack it up, and then be like, hey, new place. Um, yeah, but I think all that moving was part of why it was easy for me to travel. All right, I don't know how much more I'm going to do with this. I kind of like it's like I started just with that clear form, the drawing, um, and I kind of like that it's not super defined, even though I started from that kind of clarity of the drawing. Um, Lewis, do I miss Australian food? What's Australian food? The fruit and veg there, everything grows there. And I remember like my favorite shop was the fruit and veg shop. And it was just like, because it's so big and it's actually like Australia's kind of like the size of most of Europe if you kind of squish the countries in, took out the water in between and packed them in together. Um, and it expands through all these climates so that you're like, there's tropical fruit. Whoops, I just knocked my camera. There's yeah, different kind of, because so many people from so many different places came to Australia and there's all this kind of mix of food that's really interesting. Vegemite is not something that I miss, Martina, no. um, and Nick, that's funny. It will be interesting to see whether my kids are travelers like you. Recently, our 6-year-old has been saying, I'm never going to leave you. Just like, I always want to live with you. I'm never going to leave. And I'm also very curious to see how it's going to be. So there were things which I think in any city, like when I was studying, had access, like studying in the city, although I didn't grow up in the city, but like everything was there in Adelaide, which was kind of amazing. And I loved how close everything was. I'm just going to draw a little bit into this and keep chatting a bit. So, but that was like 23 minutes, including the 5 minutes drawing in the beginning. So food wise, yeah, there was so much great food. Just because it was like all of the kitchens of like so many countries all coming to this place and bringing their food with them. So that's really cool. But I don't know. We cook a lot. Don't eat out that much, and I don't eat meat, so a lot of the typical German food is like not what I eat anyway. So but you can get you can get everything here too. If you're making your own food, you kind of also have access to lots of things here. Thanks to, globalism. So I just found out about the story of Tsutomu Yamaguchi just like an hour before I started the live stream. And for those who joined late, he survived both bombings, nuclear bombings of Japan. He was 29 years old in Hiroshima working as an engineer, and survived it. And then he went back to his home city of Nagasaki and survived the bomb blast there as well. And I just thought it'd be so good if no bombs were ever dropped again anywhere, no matter how big and what their destructive capacity is. But yeah, I'm really interested to learn more about him, because he's then lived his life until I'm not sure, wasn't maybe 90 something, and was like anti-war activist, and it's pretty cool. Rave222, you are ironically back to one of your childhood homes. Your dad lived there all along, and now you're all back there. Mum, dad, you, little sister. Cool. It's a typical 6-year-old state of mind, never leaving mum and dad. Yeah. And Nick, your twins are 26, and you're lucky if you can get a text back. My 3 kids are all so different from each other. So, yeah, I'm super curious. And I feel like my relationship to my family is super close, even though we can go quite a while without talking to each other, and we're geographically quite far apart, but we're close. Yeah, who knows? It'll be interesting to see how things turn out. All right, I like this. This worked out pretty well. This is like my safe space, doing a drawing first and then painting into it. And so it wasn't too adventurous, but I like the softness. There was some wet and wet stuff going on here, something I could keep like pushing a bit more. But yeah, thank you for being here. We didn't talk much about anti-war activism. We talked about moving a lot, feeling at home everywhere. And that's something I think about, that like the whole planet is this one place that we all share. And some people are really closely connected to a particular geographical location. And I guess where I live now, growing up, I never lived anywhere as long as I have been living here. So yeah, I wonder, what does that mean? Who knows? All right, thank you everyone for being here. I love hanging out and sketching with you. I can't wait to see your sketches. So if you are sharing, feel free to share to Instagram and also to the Discord server. Yeah, that's it for today. And I'll share the Discord server link in the chat again, just in case you're watching and you're not in the Discord server yet. Now's the time. And if you made it all the way to the end, this was an interesting, I should have said this earlier, but if you're watching the replay, please put, that's right, your drawing pencil hand in the chat, your drawing hand emoji, or your paintbrush. Nick, very good. Always up for yapping. That's good. It's good to have a yapping sometimes. Here is the link to Discord. Join the Discord server. I share the references there. We share our work there. I would love you to share your work there. Maybe you don't share your work there, but I would love you to. And if you made it all the way to the end of this, you're watching the recording and you didn't realize, this was something we talked about yesterday, but I think it'd be good for everyone to know, you can, if you're watching the replay, it needs a certain time of processing. I think maybe 24 hours, or with, like, not immediately, but after the live stream has ended, you can watch the replay with the live chat on. So you'll see the questions that I'm responding to, and there's interesting stuff that comes up as well. There's also things I don't respond to sometimes, but I try to. I enjoy chatting with you. But yeah, if you're watching the replays, sometime after they've gone live, there'll be a button where it says live chat replay, and you can put that up and then you'll see it as we go through. You'll be able to see everything that was discussed. You'll share something by the time you manage to finish something excellent with the skull by the time you're dead, perhaps. Wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to the next one. You're all great. And Martina, I think the live chat, those who want to chat while watching replay, yes, that's right. You can't chat into the live chat, but you can have the live chat on. So as you hear me like responding to the questions and things people are saying, you'll be able to see it scrolling up. So it's not the default that it's always on. You can't chat into it because you'd be chatting with the past, but you can write in the comments. Thank you to everyone who writes in the comments, because that's great. All right, thanks everyone. Rest well, and